Hey guys, this is part 18 of Azure tutorial. In this video, we will learn what are Azure SQL databases. Now you must be wondering, well, in this video, we were going to learn how to deploy an ASP.NET data-derived web application to Microsoft Azure. But yes, I was going to make the video on the same, but I thought that a video on SQL databases if I make a video on SQL databases before, I think it will be a good move. So let's now see what is the need to create a SQL database in Azure. SQL database in Azure provides a managed database service that allows you to create, scale, and operate relational databases in the cloud. We can use SQL database to build data-driven applications and websites in your preferred language without having to manage the infrastructure. SQL database built provides built-in availability and business continuity features. It provides advanced security features such as data encryption at rest and also in transit. These features are sure to uh, these features are sure to delete or to remove the thought of creating your or establishing your data on an on-premise data center and shift to a SQL data center in Azure. Well, now let's see what are the benefits of Azure SQL databases. Advanced automated management, reliable availability, backup and durable, integrated with Microsoft and Azure ecosystems, modern scalability, advanced security, and flexible pricing and service tiers. Risks of Azure SQL database. If we misuse this database, it can lead to data loss, leakage, or corruption. Hackers are always trying to remotely gain unauthorized access to published databases. It can eventually lead to a SQL injection attack. We will discuss about SQL injection attacks in later videos. As the ports are open to the internet, if we provide weak passwords, then there are great chances of a cyber attack and eventually can lead to a lot of loss. Advantages of gaining remote access to cloud database. It provides flexible access to the database from anywhere and at any time. It allows for flexible setup and costs. It provides full control on authorization and access. It provides centralized storage and backups. It allows for shared resources, which leads to greater efficiency and collaboration. Now let's see how to create SQL database in Azure and how to remotely access it through Microsoft SQL Server and Azure Data Studio. Let's flip over to the Azure portal. So here I am logged in with my Azure subscription. Let's go to the resource groups. Here you will see that I have only one resource group created. So and now let's move on to the SQL databases tab. Here I don't have any SQL database created. So to create a SQL database, I can click this button that says create SQL database, or I can click this prominent button that says create. Let me click on this button. Now it will navigate me or redirect me to the SQL database creation page. Here subscription free trial, resource group. I have one resource group, but I don't want to create the SQL database in this resource group. So I will create a new one. As per the naming convention, I will start the resource group name with RG, then with a hyphen, and then let's say test SQL database. Oh, sorry. Um, and this is the purpose for which I'm creating the resource group. I will click on OK. Then database details. Database name. Let's name our database. Now the common convention is to start the database name with db hyphen. Let's name it db hyphen testing. And server is necessary. Currently we don't have any server in this resource group, so let's create a new server name. Let's name that sample server, as it's the only name available in Microsoft Azure. Location East US. Here is the important bit to keep in mind. Authentication method. We have seen this in our previous video. While creating the SQL database server, select this radio button that says use SQL authentication as Azure Active Directory make remote connections complex. Here, um, give an admin username. Let me type in my name and then enter a password. Let me enter this password and let's retype the password again. Passwords and confirm passwords are matched. Let's click on OK button. So it's creating the SQL server. Then let's want to create a SQL elastic pool. Let's just skip no here. Let's skip all the default options. Let's and now shift to the next tab that says networking. Here network connectivity. If you want to connect remotely access this, you need to set this to you need to check this radio button that says public endpoint. Firewall rules. Allow Azure services and resources to access this server. Yes, I want this because we need to access this database from SQL Server Management Studio and Azure Data Studio. Add current client IP address. Let's click yes. This adds a firewall rule to the SQL database. Here, let's give security. We don't have to do anything right here. Additional settings, data source. Here, let's select sample and go with it. Or you can even select none. That doesn't matter. Tags, we don't have to do anything here. So let's click this review and create button. Here is past the final validation. Let's click the create button. Now it will be initializing the deployment, then submitting the deployment, and in no time our deployment will be running in the cloud. It will take a couple of minutes to create the SQL server and the SQL database. So let me pause the video for you guys. Right here the deployment is going on and here you can see the SQL server is created. Now let's wait for other components to also to be created. Right now you can see the SQL database, our SQL database is also created. Now it's loading some other, now it's creating some other utilities that are required by the database server and the database itself. Let's give it a few seconds to create. So here our deployment is complete. Let's go to the resource group. For that, here search for resource group. Here I see the resource group created, RG test SQL database. Let's expand this and here I will see the SQL server created. Okay, there was a little issue. Now we can see the SQL database also created. Now if you want to remotely gain access to the SQL server in Azure, we have to go to the SQL server properties. So here I am on the overview blade. Now keeping this window open, let's shift to SQL Server Management Studio. Here I have a brand new instance of SQL Server Management Studio open. To connect to external server, I will click this icon. Here we have to provide the server name. Server name, so server name it expects. So here is the server name of, here is the fully qualified server name of our SQL server in Azure. Let's copy it to clipboard and let's right click and paste it here. And let's select here SQL authentication and use the username and password. Use the username and password to basically log into the SQL server in Azure. Let's check this checkbox remember password and let's try to connect. Now it's establishing a connection between SQL server in my local SQL server and the SQL server in Azure. Let's give it a few seconds to connect completely. So here it's connecting to the SQL Server Management Studio in Azure. It's loading some accessories. So here it is connected completely. If I expand the databases folder, I will see my DB testing database. Here I can launch a new query editor window to execute queries against this database. So like if you want to create some table, or if you want to execute some triggers or any other stored procedures against this database, I can do that. Just remember to select this database. DB testing. Let's now shift our focus to Azure Data Studio. In our previous video, we have already seen how to connect that, but once again let's check this out. So here we have to click on this ever simpler way, that is new connection. Here Here, connection type is Microsoft SQL Server. Server name, let's paste. Oh, sorry. Let's paste the name. Sample server. Not database, not Windows, not net. Authentication type. Let's use our username and password. Our username is this, and password is this. Let's check this checkbox. Remember password. And here is loading all the databases that are available under this server. So let's give it a few seconds to load the database. So here it has loaded the database. Here I'm going to select DB testing. I don't have any server groups. I don't have any server group. So I will simply choose connect. Now it's loading the connections. Let's give it a few seconds to establish a connection between the SQL Server in Azure and Microsoft Azure Data Studio. Here, once again, we can launch new query editor window, and we can run queries against the database. Let's now shift to slides. Important points during the creation of Azure databases. While creating the SQL Server, make sure to check the authentication type as use SQL authentication as Azure Active Directories make remote connections complex. While creating the SQL database in the networking blade, under the network connectivity, make sure to check the connectivity method as public endpoint to allow remote access. Also check allow Azure services and resources to access this server, and add current client IP address to allow your current specific machine to gain access to the database. In our next video, we will see how to deploy an ASP.NET Web Application project which is data driven by SQL Server to Microsoft Azure. That's it in this video. Thank you for listening.